Today, I decided to be like a dragon, infinite wealth, with only linebackers. As of the time I'm writing this script, Infinite Wealth released around 2 weeks ago, and I started recording immediately with a challenge in mind. It's still a new game, so I'm not gonna make the rules of the challenge that strict. The one and only rule is to change my job to linebacker as soon as possible, and then never switch jobs for the rest of the run. For this video, I will be explaining the story to the best of my ability while also showing a lot of the gameplay at the same time. This will be a long video, and any future videos on this game, I will be leaving the story out of it and focus purely on the gameplay. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. I don't get access to the linebacker job until Chapter 5, so I won't be showing that much gameplay just yet. We start the game by seeing Ichiban working at Hello Work, making an honest living for himself, and beat up a thug from one of the tutorials. Ichiban's main goal is to help Yakuza members move back into the world as civilians, and he also had Adachi help him out as well. Ichiban gets the courage to ask Saiko out on a date, gets pointers from Adachi and Namba, and it all goes to shit when he proposes to her on the first date. 1 year later, things aren't looking well with Saiko as she's ghosted Ichiban for the entire time, and then Ichiban gets fired from his job out of nowhere. We later realize what happened, and it was because of some VTuber's big channel that had footage of Ichiban, but what the footage looked like was him directing orders to an ex-Yakuza to shoplift and then buys the item off of him for a discount, making him seem like a criminal. We get to fight some punks shortly after, and I get to see the most beautiful smile. Oh, cool. That smile, bro, I love it. Turns out Ichiban wasn't the only one to lose his job. Adachi and Namba also lose theirs as well. We head back home to discuss this madness and learn that the Siryu clan has been acting up lately, even after the dissolution. With Takabe in prison, someone else is taking control of the clan, and the thug we fought at the very beginning of the game also went back to them, so now we want to help him get out. I do a sub-story, head to the homeless camp to see the new castle, and the chief tells us how to get inside the Siryu clan, that being through the sewer. And I gotta say, they made the dungeons really cool in this game. We make our way out of the sewers and into the Siryu clan. I fight through many waves of enemies and make it to the chairman's office and meet the one running the place, Ibuna. He brings us to a warehouse that they own and tells us that a lot of Yakuza couldn't return to the civilian lifestyle, so he claims that the Siryu clan will help them by giving them work, calling it the Second Great Dissolution. Before we leave, there's someone that wants to meet us, and that's Sawashiro. He describes to us why he's out of prison and also that he wasn't the one to kill Hoshino. He wants to ask us a favor, which means sending us to Hawaii to see Ichiban's mother, Akane. So we agree to go meet her. We say our goodbyes to Adachi and Namba and head on over to the airport. We help a guy out of a wheelchair, who I like to call Bon Voyage guy. We get into a taxi so he can take us to see Akane, but before we get there, he points a gun at us to rob us. We aren't scared because we know he can't pull the trigger, and we get to fight him. We beat him easily, but before he gives us our address, he gets the cops over, eats the address, and frames Ichiban. But we don't get arrested because...
That might not safe.
That's right, Bon Voyage guy saves our ass. We hang out with him for a while, exploring some of Hawaii, and he decides he will help us recover the address that the robber ate. We get to his apartment. He recovers the address, but before we leave, we get some unwanted guests, one of them being the robber. His boss walks in shortly after, Yamai, and the robber's name is Tamizawa. Yamai wants us to pay for the taxi that was impounded, but we already know this is going to end in fists. We take out his grunts with some support buffs from Bon Voyage guy, and then take down Yamai with the good old ball buster. We get to the address, we hear someone inside, but as you can see from the next scene they show, things didn't go so well. Going back to the previous day where we're in front of her house, we meet Akane's maid. We get some flashbacks from talking all day to the maid, named Chitose. She gives us too much to drink, and eventually we pass out. The next morning, we wake up butt naked on the beach with everything stolen from us. Back to real time, this cop doesn't believe us, and also gets greedy and wants to put more false cases on us to make his own life easier. We break free from the police officers and start to run away. We eventually get away, but then are told to freeze. We believe we are done for, however this isn't an officer. Instead, it's Kiryu. Turns out Kiryu was sent to Hawaii for a job given by the Daidoji faction, and while he's with us, he's gonna help get our passport back that was stolen from us. We head back to Akane's place later in the day, but nobody is here. Once we figure that out, Kiryu tells us that the person he was told to track down is Akane, and shortly after, we get company, that being Yamai and his crew. We try to run, but Tomizawa catches up to us, threatening to shoot. He's too scared to shoot, so we try to get him on our side. Yamai and his crew find us, put pressure on Tomi to shoot, but he shoots at Yamai instead and joins us to fight. The grunts are easy to take down, and we are able to escape with Tomi. We learn a bit about Yamai's past and also that Akane is being hunted down by many other people for a reason we don't know. We head to Kiryu's hotel to strategize our next move, and we believe Chitose might have sold Ichiban's passport to someone who buys and resells them. We want to head over now, but Tomi explains us why that isn't a good idea late at night, and that's because of the Barracudas, Hawaiian Mafia. The next day we meet up with the reseller, but he doesn't give information out for free, so we have to buy it off him. Apparently Chitose didn't want to sell it, she wanted to know if it could get her into District 5, which is the Barracuda's hideout. It's our only lead, so we have to find a way inside, and our ticket is through a cop called Roman. Before we head over, Tomi tells us about his past with the Barracudas and how they framed him for a robbery they didn't do, which ended up ruining his life. So he has quite the grudge against them. We make our way over to see Roman, and of course he isn't easily convinced. We start fighting, and let me just say that you can make some satisfying moments by hitting a bunch of enemies at once, and there's going to be a lot more later on. The grunts were easy to take down, but Roman put up a fight. He does a pretty big amount of damage, so I had to balance out between healing items and dealing damage, eventually taking him down. Roman tries to shoot Tomi, but we save him in the last second, and with Roman knocked down, he agreed to give us a little tour through District 5 tomorrow. We head back to Kiryu's place for a while to connect with Tomi, and Kiryu breaks some news to us. He has cancer. Kiryu tells us about how he worked in a radioactive waste facility to atone for leaving the underworld behind, and how there was an accident involved that might have been the cause for his cancer, but he doesn't fully know if that was the case. It also could have been from, smoking for over 30 years. I'm telling you, never smoked that shit from Don Quixote. Anyways, after that, I learned about the new workshop for upgrading weapons, explore around town doing sub-stories, and get introduced to the Sujimon minigame, which I grinded out for about 7 hours because it's good early game money, with each platinum tier battle giving $1,000. I do more sub-stories, even more sub-stories, then finally meet up with Roman. He opens the gates into District 5, and it's time to start searching. We beat up some guys for some info, and turns out she went very deep into enemy territory. We continue forward and find a huge replica of the Anaconda Mall, and it turns out everything sold down here is counterfeits of real brands from above ground. Roman brings us into one of the factories that's supposed to be busy, but it's empty. The Barracudas come inside, killing Roman, and we get to fight them. First wave was easy to say the least, and we continued through the factory, beating everyone in our way, but eventually having to slow down because of Kiryu not feeling well. We went to hide in a storage room, and Chitose happened to be hiding there as well. Turns out she really wasn't made for Akane, but one day she just disappeared. When Ichiban showed up, she didn't want to look like a robber, so she drugged him and set him on the beach, so that way he couldn't catch up to her. She also tells us that she hid in District 5 to hide from her family, which plays a big role in Japan's economy. They wanted Chitose to be their successor, but she didn't want any part of it and fled to Hawaii. She got to meet the Barracuda's boss, and he decided to keep her around, but didn't want her exploring around the hideout, though she did anyway. With her snooping around, she got into their business with Akane, and now she knows too much. We let her join us, and after many, many battles, she takes us right to the Barracuda boss's room. Doesn't take long before the boss shows himself, his name being Dwight. He isn't so happy that Chitose betrayed him, and things start to escalate pretty quickly, which begins a boss fight. His grunts are easy to take down. Dwight himself doesn't do that much damage. The most damage he does at a time is with Deathbringer, so with plenty of furniture around and the help of a poundmate, it doesn't take long to finish him off. Dwight doesn't know where Akane is either. He was only told to retrieve her for a reward of $10 million by someone anonymous. Tomi steps up to take his time with him, and we leave. We head back to the bar to look for more hints and learn that Akane is a director of an orphanage, so that's our next stop. I do some bonding with the party, and that's important because it enhances skills like chain attacks and also tag team attacks. Once I'm finished with that, we arrive at the orphanage, learn about Palikana, a volunteer group in Hawaii that basically does charity work. A lady that works there welcomes us inside once she hears us speak about Akane. All we really learn from her is that Palikana is more than a volunteer group, and that it's based around an entire religion that's been around for hundreds of years. They need help collecting food for the food bank, so we see this as an opportunity to help out and also possibly collect more information about Akane. We didn't learn anything from asking around, so our next stop is an evening patrol on the beach that she used to volunteer in. But since we have some time before that happens, we get introduced to Alo Happy Tours, aka this is where we can finally unlock our jobs for the challenge. Unfortunately, I need confidence level 5, so after a quick trip to the vocational school and accidentally unlocking the wrong job, we have obtained our job for the challenge. And luckily, it doesn't seem like there's a minimum requirement to change my other party members' jobs, so now I got my NFL team ready. And for your information, I'm going to keep the females of this game at their starter job. I could have switched them to the tennis ace job, but I decided against it. I can save it for a future video. After playing through this game, I could probably make a video featuring every job if I wanted to. It's just that fun. Now it's time to really get this challenge started. We head on over to the beach, and they tell us about Nele Island, small islands that serves as a sanctuary to their goddess, and only a select few have access over there, one of them being their sage. We helped clean the beach, but still no clues about Akane. And then our next stop ends up taking us to an abandoned building called the Hawaiian Haunt, which is pretty much the dungeons of this game that I can go through as much as I want. They did a really good job with this. Plenty of rewards laying around everywhere, every room is completely randomized, and the shop that comes with it has some solid gear that we will be using soon. I find a weapon shop for the linebacker job, grind some money from Sujimon battles, and continue the story with my new gear. We continue to patrol through town and then see a man in trouble. Other locals are tearing down his shop, so we step in to end it. This isn't the most relevant fight to the story or anything, but I'm going to use this battle to showcase some of the abilities of the linebacker job. First move I use is Pancaker, probably my favorite move to use. It's not that MP expensive, and it hits not only the target, but the enemies around him, which can make for some satisfying moments. Next I use Pistol Formation, which just simply throws a football at an enemy and hits enemies in its way, doing some solid damage. Then I use Flagrant Headbutt next for some great single target damage, and also gives the chance to make any enemy enraged. Last move I have right now is Cooler Shower, which heals for around half your health and also gives you a defense boost. With the enemies defeated, one of the guys pulls out a gun, but it seems to be jammed. Shortly after, another Palikana member arrives, but it isn't just any member. His name is Bryce, the founder of Palikana. We head back to the orphanage to discuss with Bryce about Kane's disappearance, but learn nothing new. The next morning, Chitose seems to have a new idea to try and get Akane's attention, which means making a video and posting it on the internet. So that's exactly what we did. Chitose needs to go edit the video now, so now we head to the beach to see some thugs harassing a turtle. Long story short, we beat them up, we get scared by an ugly mascot, pass out, and he takes us to his island, which is just the Dondoku minigame. I'm not going to go over this much, but I will say a bit later into the video, I will eventually complete the island and get tons of money from it. I'll let you know when that happens. Anyways, we head back to the bar once the video is published, and it looks like Bon Voyage guy found the video and wants to meet up. We catch him up on what's happened, and he wants to help us find Akane. But before we can finish speaking, we are surrounded by the same people that vandalized the local shop, that are apparently part of the Chinese mafia. They want to take Ichiban and use him to put pressure on Akane to reveal herself. We blow them up. Like, actually blow them up. Before we escort Bon Voyage guy to a taxi, we leave him in the dust in order to go to the dungeon, and I see a very interesting weapon in stock that will be important for me to get. So I grind the dungeon for a bit, then head to the workshop, and as you will see, there's a locked recipe, but we can see that one of the materials I need for it is the wristband that was being sold in the dungeon shop. We'll come back to see what this is soon. Before we can drop off Bon Voyage guy, we get a visit from Yamai and his crew. He isn't here for Ichiban though. He wants to fight Kiryu, so that's exactly what's going to happen. In this fight, I can show you another new move called Illegal Spearing, where I can charge through many enemies in the way and deal more damage to the targeted enemy. It didn't take long to defeat Yamai. This was pretty easy. He looks fine after the fight, and he starts to believe that Kiryu has gotten weaker. So he leaves, but promises another fight in the future. Kiryu's hotel isn't a good place to hide out right now, so instead we go to the Daidoji hideout that happens to be in Hawaii. The party gets to meet Hanawa, and they agree to let them stay here as long as they get all the info we got on Akane. Ichiban explains that sharing the video to the internet had another purpose, and it was to see who else he was up against. And our next lead to investigate would be the Chinese Mafia, specifically a guy named Wong Tao. I think that's how you pronounce it. Our way in is through a secret casino, but to get in is easier said than done. We head to one restaurant to get a password for another casino. We end up cheating in that casino in order to get the manager's attention through our winning streak. Chitose uses her family name to get us access to the secret hotel, and Ichiban is asked to sit this one out and just spectate so that way they have less of a chance of being spotted. Wong eventually shows up and figures us out immediately, and he wants Ichiban to come into the casino. So that's what we did, and we follow him to his office. Of course he wants information out of us, but all he's going to get is a fist to the face. Wong's main gimmick is that he's hard to hit, so we take his grunts down first, and then struggle to hit him, except for when it's Tomi's turn, as he has a move from his starter job that I got called Scrub Down, and I feel like it never misses. That move helped us speed up the process of getting his health to the halfway point, and once we pass his QTE, he gives himself health regeneration, which combining that with his ability to dodge easily, I can see this being annoying for people. So I just heal up, get a lucky fear effect on him, which basically skipped one of his turns, and I use a strong move that I unlocked from a sub-story to finish him off. It's finally time to get some info out of him, and he tells us about some overseer that is pulling the strings in all of this. Apparently Akane ran away with the overseer's treasure, but before we can continue speaking, one of his men turns out to be a spy, talks about how it's on him to be a signal, and then jumps out of the window to his death. Once Wong figured out what that signal meant, he realized his son is in danger, so we tried to rush over to him, but we're too late. He's already been taken. We beat up some guys, and our only choice is to get out of here. We don't get far before we are ambushed again, so we have to fight off these guys too. Once that's done, Wong gets stabbed in the knee, and we carry him into the woods. Tomi leaves to get a car, and we get some time to get more info out of Wong. Turns out that this overseer is none other than Bryce, the Palikana sage. We see a picture of Akane with a little girl, and she's the one that Bryce wants, her name being Lonnie, and apparently she has the power to ruin Bryce's career. We learn about how Wong ended up serving under Bryce, and also how he uses his influence to brainwash Palikana believers into following his every command, as we saw at the hotel. And we conclude that Akane probably ran off with Lonnie to protect her from Bryce. This seems all too familiar to Kiryu, as it's a similar situation to when he helped Haruka back in the day. So he's more than dedicated to save Lonnie and Akane. We hear someone close by looking for us, and it's Yamai, and he's looking for Wong to likely finish off the rest of his Chinese mafia group. Yamai gets the wise idea to set the forest on fire, and sure enough, it forces us to move. And he runs right into us, so it's time for a fight. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Oh. Honestly, I wish I could say more about this fight, but it was over in a minute. We just do too much damage right now. Tomi finally arrives right on time. We get Wong into the car, and Kiryu decides to hold the rest off. But Kiryu can't hold out much longer, yet he tells the others to leave, and with the others gone, Yamai deals the finishing blow. Back at the Daidoji hideout, everyone is worried sick about Kiryu, so now our new priority is getting him back. Tomi knows where to find Yamai's hideout, but it would be harder to get Kiryu back without any help. Shortly after, we get a call, and it's from Adachi and Namba, and they were bored without Ichiban around, so they came to Hawaii. What perfect timing. We meet them at the beach, and then catch them up on everything that's happened. So we take Chitose out of our party, and before we go save a dragon, I of course have to give them their correct jobs and gear. Once that's done, we head on over to Yamai's part of town and meet an old lady at a tattoo shop that Tomi knows about. She can't tell us anything, but she doesn't have to, as Yamai's goons find us. We knock them around a bit, and they tell us that their main hideout is at a theater building. And with no regards to our safety, we fight through many, many waves of enemies until we reach the top floor, where Yamai is waiting for us with hostesses by his side. We pancake his crew, give Yamai a bath, play some volleyball with him, then this dude decides to literally fly straight into us, and then makes a counter stance when he couldn't even take a hit. That was an interesting fight to say the least. Yamai refuses to tell us where Kiryu is, but one of his hostesses tells us that he is safe. We are taken to the room where Kiryu is, and the hostess tells us that Yamai decided to look after Kiryu because he used to look up to him. Yamai comes in to tell us that he's only looking for Akane to make himself known in Hawaii to the other mafia groups that are after her. Since he kept Kiryu safe and was truthful to us about his intentions, we fill him in on the rest of the details about Akane's situation. After that, he decides to not go after Akane and Lani anymore, and will let us leave. Unfortunately, Kiryu is no longer in fighting shape to be helping, as he would only slow down the team, so Hanawa decides to send him back to Japan with Namba looking after him. It's up to Ichiban and the rest of the team to save Akane and Lani. After all that, our only lead is heading back to the orphanage, but we aren't going to do that just yet, because I decided to play Dondoku Island for around 8 hours, finishing the minigame and coming back with a lot of money. How much money do I have? 589,000. Oh my god, okay. With all this money, I decided to rank up the workshop to max rank in order to see what max level weapon would give me, and for a more defensive style class, it's a fitting weapon, with perfect guards reflecting damage back to the enemy. Still couldn't craft it though, didn't know how to get squid tentacles at that point. I decided to grind the dungeon for an hour to get 2 of the wristbands. I'll come back eventually to get 2 more, but I decided to continue the story. We arrive at the orphanage and it seems much quieter. Once we head inside, Bryce is there, reading a story to the kids. 2 of his bodyguards come in, and also some gang members, while Bryce leaves. With our new gear, this was a cakewalk. After the fighting, 2 of the Palikana members we knew from earlier arrived not knowing what happened, so we fill them in. Though it's hard for them to believe us, and we start to figure this Nele Island is more of a training facility for Bryce to brainwash more people. We've reached chapter 8, and what the game does from here is switch between protagonists after each chapter, so now we get to play as Kiryu for a bit. The doctor tells us that Kiryu's condition has only gotten worse, and it almost seems like Kiryu has given up on treatments, so it's up to Namba to encourage him to live on. After getting nowhere with that, Namba brings in the reinforcements, aka Xianhe. Bro, why is she hot? She basically comes over to convince Kiryu to think about himself for once, since he always seemed to live for others. So our first stop is at the batting cages. We realize that we gained Ichiban's schizophrenic powers when fighting some thugs. After that fight, I had to remember to change jobs back to linebacker, as they automatically went back to default for some reason. Baseball seemed to be a good idea, and it gives Namba the idea to let Kiryu make a bucket list to tie up some loose ends. Once we get a lot of ideas written down, Namba decides we should add another member to our party, that being Psycho. Next stop is Survive Bar to do some karaoke, and we meet a familiar bartender, though we play along with the act that we don't know him. We sing our hearts out, and then Seonghee hears that the Steiryu clan is acting suspicious once again, which means we want to meet up with Sawashiro. Turns out they are settling into Tojo headquarters for their base of operation, and Kiryu ain't pleased in the slightest. Steiryu clan Lieutenant Narasaki welcomes us inside, and Sawashiro shortly after. So we follow them into the building. We learn that they are moving operations to Hawaii because they have a business partner over there that stores waste, which is Palikana. And they own an island where they keep all that waste, which is Nele Island. When we try to tell them about Palikana's other actions, including hunting down Akane and Lani, they claim that they have never heard of it. And soon after, they say they will look into it. So we leave. We go back to thinking about Kiryu's bucket list, and the next thing we want to do is pay our respects. So we head over to the graveyard, and Date happened to be there as well. So we head to Serena and catch up with him. It didn't last long, but there's this part of the game called Lifelinks where you can meet up with Date in order to meet people from Kiryu's past, but I won't be going over it much. I do some bonding with the team, beat the living shit out of an assassin, and rest for the night. We wake up with our phone ringing, and it's Seonghee saying the Steiryu clan got the best of us. On the VTubers channel, they expose to the world that Kiryu is still alive, with the Steiryu clan being featured on the channel to back it up with evidence. We start to believe that the Steiryu clan and that channel have been teamed up for a while, so we want to have a little chat with them again. We beat up some thugs that started recording us, and then tried to call Hanawa, but he wasn't picking up for some reason. Back to Ichiban's side of things, Wong gives us the idea to check out Night Square, as that's where Akane and Lani were last seen before their disappearance, which is in Yamai's territory. So we head over. Trying to head over there is easier said than done, as every thug in Hawaii is after us, so we get bothered a lot. And I mean a lot. The tattoo lady sees us making trouble, doesn't know anything about Akane and Lani, and we get ambushed once again, but this time they forgot whose territory this is, and Yamai joins the fight. With his help in the first wave and a pound mate in the second wave, the fight ended before it started. We try to convince him to help us, but the only way we can do that is with our fists. In this fight, I can show you a new move, which is one of two essence moves. This one being Essence of Showboating. This can hit all enemies in a large radius, dealing some heavy damage and also raising your team's defense stat at the same time.
Go! Attack it! Go! Steady now! Go! Fight on! Go! Fight on! Hip! Hooray! Go! Fighting!
Beautiful. Beautiful. With Yamai defeated, he agrees to help us by keeping Akane and Lani safe once they find her. Right after that, the tattoo lady comes around wanting to speak with Ichiban, and apparently she might know where Akane and Lani are hiding, but it'll cost us 10 grand. Not like that's an issue. We handed her the money and she wanted to meet us at the docks later, but before we head over there, there was something I wanted to do first. I go to the workshop, research a way to get some squid tentacles, find some after picking up trash for half an hour. I'm able to create my first out of 4 7-star weapons for the linebacker job. We head over to the docks to meet the tattoo lady, and we all get in her boat. She stops us in the middle of the ocean, and another boat arrives, and it has Akane and Lani on board. It's time to bring them to the Daidoji hideout to ensure they are safe and return to Japan soon. During the car ride over there, we learn that Lani has a Palikana pendant and also that the past sage of Palikana wrote in their will that Bryce should not become the next sage, and that Lani is actually the next successor. So that's why Bryce is after the two of them. We arrive at the Daidoji hideout, and the jet is being prepared. And Chitose gets very tense and takes Bon Voyage guy's phone. She says that he's been blackmailing her for a while, that he can walk just fine, and that he was playing on Ichiban's sympathies. He starts to laugh as the act is finished, and he also brings up Ibina from the Siryu clan. His tablet has been recording the whole thing to Dwight, and the Barracudas raid the place. They kidnap Lani, Hanawa and Wong are shot, Bon Voyage guy escapes, and we're stuck having to fight the lowlifes, which were easy to handle. Unfortunately, they escaped with Lani, Akane is unconscious, but Hanawa and Wong didn't make it. Then right after, Hanawa's phone starts to ring, and it's Kiryu, so we break the bad news to him. Kiryu is filled in on what happened, and Chitose also confesses that she is the owner of the VTuber channel, and Bon Voyage guy has been working under Ibina since the very beginning. Our next stop is to go speak to Sawashiro to see whose side he's really on, as Ichiban isn't convinced that Sawashiro would put Akane in danger. We decide to take a moment to strategize our next move, and once we get to Survive Bar, Zhao and Junji were waiting for us. We catch them up on what's happened, and we directly call Sawashiro. He tells us that he's at the warehouse, and Zhao decides to come with us. Unfortunately, Junji sits this one out. Jiang-hee tells us about the dungeon for Yokohama that's similar to the Hawaiian Haunt, which I used to grind a few levels. Then we head on over to see Sawashiro. We beat up some thugs and get to Sawashiro, and it doesn't take long before we start throwing fists. Do I even need to say what happened to the grunts? Sawashiro likes to switch weapons often, which threw me off for a bit, but he wasn't that hard to take down. Then he tells us that he needs to speak to the team as far away from Ibina, so we agree to throw him into the ocean so they can meet up at Ichi's place later. Sawashiro tells us that the Second Great Dissolution is all fake, and it was just used to lure in more Siryu clan members. Sawashiro wants to turn Ibina's plan against him, though, and actually carry out the Second Great Dissolution. And he also wants to figure out what other motives Ibina has with helping out Bryce. He hopes to have our support when the time comes to twist Ibina's plan against him. Ichiban's still living with the guilt, so Yamai had to knock some sense into us and remind us that it isn't over yet. Chitose bailed on us for some reason, taking one of Yamai's pistols, so we start to think she's trying to get revenge by herself to rescue Lani. Our only lead is to go to the Daidoji hideout for clues, come up short-handed, but some of the Daidoji agents came around, and they want to help us. Before that, though, I did a little grinding off camera, which means I got all 4 of the 7-star weapons I needed, which also got me some extra levels too. A little tip for you guys, when it comes to getting money in this game, Sujimon battles are the best for early game, then the Hawaiian Haunt for mid to late game. Donduku Island is good for money when you play through its story, but afterwards, it's not as efficient, and only good for when you AFK for short periods of time. The Daidoji agents tell us about Ibina's connection with Bryce, Bon Voyage guys pass with how his life was ruined by the Yakuza, and then Chitose sends us a picture of a bar, and we head over there immediately. We make it inside, and sure enough, Bon Voyage guy is there. Before we get to him, though, we have to go through some grunts.
Don't get smart with me.
やるのかこの野郎
よし、やるぜ。
二人がかりだ
ガツンといくぜ。
Bro, I love that. I love that so much. Oh my god. See, this is why I love that move. Bon Voyage guy tries to convince us that they already killed Lonnie, but with a little pressure from Chitose holding him at gunpoint, they bring her out. Then the grunt goes and slashes her arm. I squash some more grunts and catch up to them trying to escape. They set a grenade on her lap and send her rolling down the stairs with it, but it actually wasn't a grenade. Instead, it's tear gas. Chitose tries to bring Lonnie out of it, but it doesn't work, and they take the girl back. Chitose explains to us how the VTuber channel came to be, and how when Bon Voyage guy stepped in, the entire channel changed into what the party knows it as now. Our only idea right now is that Lonnie is being taken to Nele Island as soon as possible, so we want to go see Akane. But then Yamai calls us and tells us that some of his men are trying to capture her. We see a large group outside trying to break into his house. Then one of the grunts with a phone shows us that he's on the phone with Dwight, and also Bon Voyage guy. Apparently, it isn't just Ichiban that he wants to suffer, but every Yakuza out there, and Ibina has the power to make that happen. We get to fighting, but the enemies don't learn their lesson. They didn't spread out enough. We fight more waves of grunts, eventually fighting 2 excavators, using one to break a new entrance into Yamai's hideout, somehow not dying from it, fight even more enemies, and make it to the main room where Bon Voyage guy is watching us through a screen. In this fight, I can show you a new move, as I have unlocked all the moves now, this one being Hail Mary Bomb, where you can throw a football super high into the air, and on your next turn, it falls down on the enemy and anyone around them for some heavy damage. Goodbye. Just got nuked. Bruh. I can also showcase Essence of End Zone, which does heavy damage to the target and others behind him, and also does more damage to enemies who are enraged.
What the hell's going on?
Akane is safe and sound because nobody could get past Yamai, but she doesn't know where Nele Island is, unfortunately. We spend some time with Akane on the beach, giving her Arakawa's ashes, and now it's time to see what Kiryu is up to. We're planning on paying a visit to some old friends, but we gotta prepare first. I mainly just leveled up our bond with Zhao, didn't bother grinding levels, so I'm going into this next section underleveled. We end up getting a ride from someone in their truck because no taxi driver ends up driving into this area, and we arrive at our destination. This winter wonderland is home to some Yakuza legends, that being Majima, Daigo, and Seijima. And we got some catching up to do. We learned that the VTuber channel got all kinds of bad info in order to shut down the Great Dissolution, which eventually worked, and it sent these 3 into a place far away from the media. We also learned that Ibina is very likely to be a son of Arakawa, but he didn't know about him, and left Ibina with just his mother, who passed away when he was still in middle school, also meaning that Ichiban and Ibina are half-brothers. We ask for their help with aiding Sawashiro, but they aren't keen on doing that as they don't think they can be of any help. Kiryu isn't so pleased with this and tries to leave with an attitude, which also pisses off the other 3. Things start to escalate, and we get into a fight with all 3 of them at once. This fight was actually a bit challenging, which I expected. I find out their weaknesses, use an expensive pound mate for some great damage, and then focus on Daigo, using my resurgence ability to almost take him down. I heal when needed, use showboating for some defense from Majima's clones, and then once Daigo gets to low HP, we are able to turn this game back into the beat-em-up style it once was, and throw a flurry of punches, defeating Daigo. My next focus will be on Majima, using showboating for his clones, getting drunk like Henry Ruggs would, and then using Hail Mary Bomb a lot. We go back into this weird brawling dimension to finish off Majima, and that just leaves Seijima. This mammoth almost killed half my team in a single move, but I got my resurgence ability back just in time, and I almost died, which would have sucked, but we defeated Seijima, winning the battle. That was a fun one. Kiryu shows them just how determined he is to see things through, and we leave. Once we are back in Ichincho, we get swarmed with people taking pictures of Kiryu and the gang, so we run home and call it a night. Next clip is on the VTubers channel, where the truck driver spies on Kiryu and the others, and he twists their words into thinking that Kiryu is trying to revive the Tojo to his former glory. Anyways, they plan on doing a live stream at Tojo headquarters, so that's our next stop. On the stream, Ibina claims that the Shiryu clan will be disbanding right after they get the Second Great Dissolution working, which would also help with the disposal of nuclear waste. He officially disbands the clan and says they will become a non-profit organization under the name of Bleach Japan. With the stream finished, it's time to head inside, and of course there are people waiting for us, including the Shiryu clan lieutenant. We beat our way through waves of enemies, eventually running into the lieutenant, and after sending more grunts our way, he decides to take matters into his own hands, with the biggest sword known to mankind. I wonder if he's compensating for something. Once we have enough defense boosts up, he doesn't do much damage to us, and it didn't take long before he was defeated. Turns out it was all a trap. Ibina and Sawashiro were never here to begin with, and that live stream was a recording. Just as we were leaving, a bunch of people recording the situation come in to see all the knocked out grunts, and they all swarm Kiryu and the party with the cameras in their faces. Back to Ichiban, and since we can't find the island, we decide to look into ships that might be going there. So we go to the docks, as Tomi has a friend working over there. Turns out he also works under Palikana, so we fight them. This fight I can show you the move Conversion Attempt, which kicks a football at an enemy and then ricochets to other enemies nearby, doing some decent damage. Once they are defeated, they die on us from a poison capsule, and we try to run, but we get harassed in every corner of the city. So we eventually hide in a small temple. We realize that Lonnie likely isn't on the island yet because if she was, Bryce would be playing defensively rather than sending thugs out to kill Ichi and the party. Right after we say that, a surprising guest shows up, that being Jungi. Seong-hee sent him over to Hawaii not long ago, and he was able to find an image of the island, and also figures out what the cargo ship looks like, though it's still hidden. Chitose remembers a secret passageway back in the Barracuda's hideout, and we believe it holds our path to the ship. And Jungi decides to join us. We get a warm welcome at the Barracuda's hideout, fight through many waves of enemies as per usual, eventually finding the docks. And Dwight is here with Lonnie. She bites his hand to escape, and it's time to fight. He's pretty much the same as last time, except stronger, of course. The area has a lot of explosives around that do tons of damage to Dwight, and with a lot of defense and good gear, he can't do much damage to us, so he goes down easily. We reunite Akane and Lonnie, but we can't get them to Japan with the airport anymore, so we need to come up with another idea. Yamai comes in and tells us that he has a boat of his own, and he can get us to Japan, at least far enough away for the Japan Coast Guard to come get us. The next morning, we got on the boat to get out of Hawaii. Boats arrive, but it isn't the Coast Guard. Instead, it's Dwight. Before we start fighting, the boat gets surrounded by sharks, which makes for an epic battlefield to say the least. The sharks can sometimes get some chip damage into the grunts, but they aren't much of a threat otherwise. With some showboating on his grunts and a bomb to the face, Dwight is defeated. He tries to escape, but Yamai tells us to wait, and because of the bright lights on his boat, the sharks take notice. We arrive in Japan, and we see Date waiting for us. Turns out Yamai is turning himself into the cops in exchange for that safe arrival back in Japan. Before Date could arrest him, he makes a run for it, and we have to go find him, which is around Kamurocho. We look around for a while, and eventually it leads us to a hospital, where he gets to see an old flame of his. Don't know how else to put it, as I didn't get that deep in Yamai's background. Just gives you more reason to play the game for yourself. We have arrived at the final chapter of the game, and it starts with Ibina killing the lieutenant, and also leaving Sawashiro alive but tortured. The whole gang reunites underneath the homeless camp's castle, and it's time to do some planning. During that time, Ibina calls us himself, and he shows us Sawashiro to bait us into coming to the Millennium Tower. But that's not the only problem right now. A bunch of Shiryu clan members are about to be sent to Nele Island, so we have to split up the responsibilities. Kiryu and his half of the team will handle Ibina, while Ichiban and his half of the team will go to Nele Island to stop Bryce. Now, before I resume the rest of the story, I want to showcase the rest of the moves I have yet to go over for Linebacker job. The first one being Hut Hut Hike, which reduces the damage you take and can enrage enemies, and the more you are hit, the more damage you deal the next turn. Next move is quarterback sack, which is a lot like Pancaker, but gives the chance to enrage enemies. And the final move is tilt-a-whirl tackle, which grabs an enemy and you can control the direction you move, which can hit other enemies, all for some heavy damage. And that wraps up all the special moves specifically for Linebacker. And with that out of the way, let's get back to the story. We take some time to talk to Kiryu about how Ibina may be our half-brother, asks us to handle the Yakuza's future, and tells us what we should have told Psycho instead of proposing. A Daidoji agent comes over, but instead of being mad for Kiryu's name being public again, he decides to help us get to Hawaii once we are ready. It's time to split off, and we start with Ichiban's side of things. While on the boat ride over there, we get to see Bryce's little pet, and we have to fight it off. It's weak to fire attacks, and conveniently enough, there's plenty of fire objects laying around. The shark is actually pretty strong and typically hits everybody. This makes me really glad that Cooler Shower exists. With the help of a poundmate, we defeated the shark, and somehow this shark had $60,000 on him? Weird. We find the island and are immediately attacked. They all either couldn't handle the pancakes, or ended up playing themselves. That was just the beginning. We had to make our way through the island, being disturbed multiple times, while also having to watch out for landmines. We eventually find our way into a town, but before we enter, Junji saves us from a landmine, but hurts himself in the process. The local of the island comes to see us and lets us heal up for a bit, but then some of the enemies trap us and start to torch the building. We beat them up and continue through the island, somehow coming across a giant squid that we have to fight, and shortly after, we defeat it. We made our way to an elevator and finally see where they store all the nuclear waste, and Bryce is waiting for us. He gives us a little speech that I'm not going to go over, and we get to fight Bryce and his brainwashed soldiers. All the waves weren't hard, but one thing I did find funny was after the first wave was defeated, the next wave just came in and shot their own members. They could have, attacked their enemies first, at least. It's Bryce's turn to step up, and he sure loves guns. Good thing Linebacker job has bullet resistance, so that will make this fight easier. I start with a poundmate, then I use showboating a few times for some good defense, and Bryce honestly does some pathetic damage. I use a bunch of water moves to slowly take his health down, and once he's around half health, he starts actually doing damage, raining explosives on our whole team. I fail to arrest him, give him a bath, and with only a sliver of health left, he changes his weapon to a sword, and I don't see why he did that as we defeat him a few seconds later. Bryce tells us how his defeat changes nothing. However, Chitose decides to make a video for the VTuber channel exposing what's really going on in Nelly Island. With nothing else left for Bryce, he tries to jump to his death, but we stop him just in time, and Adachi arrests him. With their work done, it's time for Kiryu and his team to put in some work. We head over to the Millennium Tower, where all of Kiryu's battles always seem to end, and are immediately greeted with a warm welcome. As we make our way up the Millennium Tower, we fight off many grunts in the way, eventually taking a break, but being disturbed by a helicopter with a machine gun. Just as we are trapped, the Tojo legends show up to help us. With this follows my favorite battle. Majima, Seijima, and Daigo all fight alongside Kiryu, and we absolutely demolish everyone that comes our way. Eventually, the three of them decide to hold the endless army of grunts off in order for Kiryu and the party to move on. We fight through many more waves of enemies, avoid the helicopter's rampage, and we arrive at the very top floor, where Ibina is waiting. He expresses to us why he hates the Yakuza so much, and how everything he has planned was to send the Yakuza to their deaths. And after we finish talking, it's time for a fight. And this was honestly the hardest one yet, which is fitting for a final boss, of course. It was actually so close, but eventually after a 25-minute battle, he styles on us too hard, and we die, making it the first death of the run. So after that, I decided to do some off-camera grinding, and got everyone to level 52 and above. It's time to take on Ibino once again, and just having a few extra levels does make a difference in damage. I start by doing some headbutts and letting fists fly. Ibino still does some good damage to us, so we have to wait and heal up at times, which is why I have Psycho on the team instead of Seonghee, as her tag team move heals everyone. We continue to headbutt until he gets to half health, in which he grabs a sword and starts to fight with that. I start to use showboating to prepare to take some damage, And that really did the trick. I was taking so little damage now. So once I realized he's weak to fire in this stage, I start to bomb his ass, use a pound mate for some great damage, and finally finish the battle with Dragon's Resurgence. And with Ibuna defeated, we have completed Infinite Wealth with only linebackers. This was a very fun challenge to do, and I am so down to make more videos like this. So leave a comment on what job specific run you would want to see next. If you enjoyed this video, then I think you might like the time where I beat Yakuza Kiwami with only Dragon style. I'll leave that video up here for you. I'd appreciate it if you gave it a look.